And there I was. I was the girl from Suits.
This one's wife. She caused the Hindenburg disaster. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, continuing this limited series of understanding the way in which this one's wife finds herself unfairly blamed for so many things that have gone wrong in the world, and how her narcissism defends her against this. For those of you unfamiliar with the Hindenburg, or where you have an awareness of it, you might not know all of its story. Accordingly, a brief history will prove useful. The Hindenburg was an airship, and it made 10 trips to the United States in 1936. After opening its 1937 season by completing a single round-trip passage to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, in late March the Hindenburg departed from Frankfurt, Germany, on the evening of May the 3rd, on the first of 10 round trips between Europe and the United States that were scheduled for its second year of commercial service. American Airlines had contracted with the operators of the Hindenburg to shuttle passengers from Lakehurst to Newark for connections to airplane flights. Except for strong headwinds that slowed its progress, the Atlantic crossing of the Hindenburg was unremarkable until the airship attempted an early evening landing at Lakehurst 3 days later on May the 6th. Although carrying only half its full capacity of passengers, 36 of 70, and crewmen, 61 including 21 crewmen trainees, during the accident flight, the Hindenburg was fully booked for its return flight. Many of the passengers with tickets to Germany were planning to attend the coronation of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth in London the following week. The airship was hours behind schedule when it passed over Boston on the morning of May the 6th, and its landing at Lakehurst was expected to be further delayed because of afternoon thunderstorms. Advised of the poor weather conditions at Lakehurst, Captain Max Pruss charted a course over Manhattan Island, causing a public spectacle as people rushed out into the street to catch sight of the airship. After passing over the field at 4 p.m, Pruss took passengers on a tour over the seashore of New Jersey while waiting for the weather to clear. After being notified at 6:22 p.m. that the storms had passed, Pruss directed the airship back to Lakehurst to make its landing almost half a day late. As this would leave much less time than anticipated to service and prepare the ship for its scheduled departure back to Europe, the public was informed that they would not be permitted at the mooring location or be able to come aboard the Hindenburg during its stay in port. Around 7 p.m, at an altitude of 650 feet, 200 metres, the Hindenburg made its final approach to the Lakehurst Naval Air Station. This was to be a high landing, known as a flying moor, because the airship would drop its landing ropes and mooring cable at a high altitude, and then be winched down to the mooring mast. This type of landing manoeuvre would reduce the number of ground crewmen, but would require more time. Although the high landing was a common procedure for American airships, the Hindenburg had performed this manoeuvre only a few times in 1936 while landing in Lakehurst. At 7:09 p.m, the airship made a sharp full-speed left turn to the west around the landing field because the ground crew was not ready. At 7:11 p.m, it turned back toward the landing field and valved gas. All engines idled ahead, and the airship began to slow. Captain Pruss ordered aft engines full astern at 7:14 p.m, while at an altitude of 394 feet, 120 metres, to try to brake the airship. At 7:17 p.m, the wind shifted direction from east to southwest, and Captain Pruss ordered a second sharp turn starboard, making an S-shaped flight path towards the mooring mast. At 7:18 p.m, as the final turn progressed, Pruss ordered 300, and 500 kilo of water ballast in successive drops because the airship was stern heavy. The forward gas cells were also valved. As these measures failed to bring the ship in trim, 6 men were then sent to the bow to trim the airship. At 7:21 p.m, while the Hindenburg was at an altitude of 295 feet 90 metres, the mooring lines were dropped from the bow. The starboard line was dropped first, followed by the port line. The port line was over-tightened as it was connected to the post of the ground winch. At 7:25 p.m, a few witnesses saw the fabric ahead of the upper fin flutter, as if gas was leaking. Others reported seeing a dim blue flame, possibly static electricity or St. Elmo's fire, moments before the fire on top and in the back of the ship near the point where the flames first appeared. Several other eyewitnesses' testimonies suggested that the first flame appeared on the port side, just ahead of the port fin, and was followed by flames that burned on top. Commander Rosendahl testified to the flames in front of the upper fin being mushroom-shaped. One witness on the starboard side reported a fire beginning lower and behind the rudder on that side. On board, people heard a muffled detonation, and those in the front of the ship felt a shock as the port trail rope over-tightened. At 7:25 p.m. local time, the Hindenburg caught fire and quickly became engulfed in flames. Eyewitness statements disagree as to where the fire initially broke out. Several witnesses on the port side saw yellow-red flames first jump forward of the top fin near the ventilation shaft of cells 4 and 5. Other witnesses on the port side noted the fire actually began just ahead of the horizontal port fin, only then followed by flames in front of the upper fin. As other gas cells started to catch fire, the fire spread more to the starboard side and the ship dropped rapidly. Although the landing was being filmed by cameramen from 4 newsreel teams and at least 1 spectator, with numerous photographers also being at the scene, no footage or photographs are known to exist of the moment the fire started. The flames quickly spread forward first, consuming cells 1 to 9, and the rear end of the structure imploded. Almost instantly, 2 tanks burst out of the hull as a result of the shock of the blast. Buoyancy was lost on the stern of the ship, and the bow lurched upwards while the ship's back broke. The falling stern stayed in trim. As the tail of the Hindenburg crashed into the ground, a burst of flame came out of the nose, killing 9 of the 12 crew members in the bow. There was still gas in the bow section of the ship, so it continued to point upward as the stern collapsed down. The cell behind the passenger decks ignited as the side collapsed inward, and the scarlet lettering reading Hindenburg was erased by flames as the bow descended. The airship's gondola wheel touched the ground, causing the bow to bounce up slightly as one final gas cell burned away. At this point, most of the fabric on the hull had also burned away, and the bow finally crashed to the ground. Although the hydrogen had finished burning, the Hindenburg's diesel fuel burned for several more hours. The result of this caused 35 fatalities, 13 passengers and 22 crewmen. And there was an initial fatality on the ground. Spokesperson for the Duchess of Sussex, D. Ludid, stated, "Once again, the Duchess of Sussex finds herself the subject of entirely inappropriate blame attribution. To suggest that the hot hair generated by the Duchess of Sussex's beige word salad speeches resulted in the Hindenburg remaining so full of gas, which not only increased the risk of ignition, but also added to the scale of the disaster, is entirely groundless and symptomatic of the unnecessary hatred the Duchess is subjected to." When it was pointed out that no news articles or conspiracy-based social media conjecture had made any such suggestion that the Duchess of Sussex was involved in the Hindenburg disaster, Deluded reported, "Of course they have. It will be there somewhere. It always is, on some obscure video or a long-lost blog post from 1937. They say, it is always her fault, something she reminds me of every day, and then she explains, except it isn't really." It was then pointed out to Deluded that blogs did not exist in 1937, and more to the point, neither did the Duchess of Sussex. Deluded responded as follows, "And if she had wanted to exist in 1937, and she could have done, because she is somebody who has found her voice and is an empowered feminist, undoubtedly racist haters would have blamed her for the disaster. They always do. I have seen her room in Monty Shit Show, where she has wall charts that she has created with all the things they say that she has done wrong. The disappearance of Lord Lucan, the start of World War II, the stock market crash of 1929, the Roswell incident, the Yangtze River flood of 1931, the Kashmir earthquake of 2005, Yoko Ono meeting John Lennon, One Direction splitting up. All of them, she has told me, you lot blame her for it, and she's never wrong. So just to be clear, she did not cause the Hindenburg disaster. Right. Once again, this one's wife, blamed for something, and her narcissism automatically rejected. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.